Welcome to Spectral Shadows, where the darkness whispers and the unseen lurks. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Because horror feels different at night, especially when you're alone. Those who love their mother, like, share, and comment. Subscribe, if you dare. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story number 1. Sorry, I didn't know where else to turn for help. My daughter hasn't been the same since the car accident last month. She used to be your typical, happy-go-lucky kindergartner. As long as you didn't run out of snacks, she didn't run out of joy. Sure, she'd get cranky if she went to bed late or had too much time on her tablet. Mostly, she was a little ray of sunshine, bouncing around the house, humming tone-deaf songs with the confidence only a small child could muster. But not since the accident. It wasn't really that serious, just a simple right turn, a horn, glass, airbag. My nose felt like it shattered. Honestly, that was the worst of it for me. Sophia was in the back seat, asleep in her booster. She barely stirred. The ambulance came, and the medic took a look at us both. They said since Sophia was a minor, they had to take her in for observation. At the hospital, they had me wait out in the waiting room while they checked her over, and let me know it would be best if they kept her overnight. I watched as they wheeled her off to another room, her sweet little hand poking out from the blankets. I never should have let her out of my sight. When I picked her up the next morning, she was quiet and withdrawn, but happy to see me. She wrapped her little arms and legs around me, almost as if clinging on for dear life. "It's okay, sweetie," I soothed, as I twisted back and forth in our embrace. "So do I just go home? Do I need to sign her out?" I asked a passing nurse, fumbling through the procedure. She just gave a cold stare for daring to interrupt her. "You can go home," she said finally, eyeing me as though I were an insect. I carried Sophia out of the hospital and got on the bus to go home. The nurse with her cold blue eyes created a feeling of unease and soured the rest of the day. Sophia was a little quiet when we got home and didn't have much of an appetite. Still, I left out some carrot sticks and Teddy Grahams for her to nibble on if she was up for it. I had to get a car, and maybe that's why I didn't notice her strange behavior at first. My insurance didn't cover very much of the vehicle replacement. In fact, it barely covered any. I guess that's what happens when you can only afford the bare minimum. I scoured online, called dealerships, and finally, when I had found the car, I scheduled an appointment to go in and test drive it. I texted my ex-husband to pick Sophia up. It was his custody weekend, and as usual, he wasn't answering his texts, and he wasn't here to get her. Sophia was so good at the dealership. She sat quietly through the paperwork and didn't fuss when the credit check took nearly 45 minutes. Normally, she'd be melting down, screaming for my phone and complaining about how hungry she was. But she must have understood the importance of getting this car for us. I told the salesman I'd need a car seat for Sophia before I could drive it. He looked confused for a moment. It was true that Sophia was just about on the threshold of no longer needing it, but safety is important to me, I said in earnest. He gave his salesman's smile and had one of his assistants purchase a booster seat for Sophia so we could drive the car home. It wasn't pink like she wanted, but she could put stickers on it later if she chose. I strapped her in and sat in the driver's seat. The accident had left me nervous. I looked in the rearview mirror at Sophia. Then I took a deep breath and exhaled. I twisted the key and started the car. The ride home was quiet. Sophia must have been feeling my fear of driving again. I quickly spoke up. "Would you like some music, honey?" I said, forcing a smile. I had to be brave for her. Fear can rub off on your children, make them grow up to be dysfunctional. "I like this car better," she stated, like it was a fact, not a feeling. "Yeah, that's great. Me too. What do you like about it?" I asked cheerily, but that was all she had to say the rest of the ride. When we got in, I fixed her a sandwich, cut into triangles the way she likes it. "You were so good today, sweetie," I purred as I stroked her cheek. "Would you like some Oreos with your sandwich?" Finally, a smile. She nodded, relieved. I got her 4 little cookies and put them on the plate next to her sandwich. "Okay, try to eat at least some of your sandwich first." I kissed her on the head and walked over to my room out of sight and earshot. I called my ex-husband again and shut the door before leaving him a message on his answering machine. "Look, Connor, today was your custody day. If you want to be a father, act like one. It's fine if you don't want to see me, but Sophia doesn't deserve to be disappointed by you every time." I tossed my phone down on the bed in disgust. Where did I go wrong with him? We used to be happily married. He was an involved father while we together. Now he won't even speak to me, or her. I guess divorce brings out the worst in people. I took a breath and walked back out to the kitchen area where Sophia was sitting. She'd lined her Oreos and Teddy Grahams into a perfect straight line across the table. Now the carrot sticks, one by one, exactly spaced. "Hey, let's eat our food instead of playing with it, okay?" I went over and started to pick up an Oreo. "Or I'm going to eat this." "Don't," she said sharply, her glare bearing into me, her sweet eyes now cold and sharp. Stunned, I didn't even know what to say. It wasn't the normal childish way of yelling at a parent to stop. This was filled with cold, simmering rage. A chill went down my spine. "Okay, sweetie," I said, putting the Oreo back down. "I was just playing. I wouldn't really eat your cookie." Her only answer was a scowl as she fixed the Oreo back into the line, as though she were more upset about the fact that I disturbed her meticulous order more than the fact that I was going to eat it. She still hadn't really eaten anything. I would call the doctor in the morning. A wave of guilt washed over me. Maybe the car accident was more traumatizing for her than I realized. We watched her favorite movie together before bed. She just stared at the screen. Normally she laughed and quoted the movie while the characters said their lines and sang along with their songs. Not tonight, though. Tonight was just eerie silence as she stared blankly at the TV. I tucked her into bed and gave her a kiss on the forehead. "Ooh, you're cold," I said, as I put an extra blanket on her and gave her an Eskimo kiss. "I'll just have to snuggle you up, warm as a bug." She just stared at me, unblinking. Unsettled, I sat up on her bedside. "Hey, honey, I know you had a long day, and it must have been really scary to be in that little accident. Do you want to talk about it?" She continued to stare for a moment. "Daddy can't stand the sight of you." The level of vitriol made my stomach turn as I involuntarily jerked back. "What?" was all I could stammer out. "You ruined everything," she hissed at me, her eyes pure hatred. Unable to gain my composure, I stammered that those words weren't very nice before standing up. "Good night, Mommy," she said sweetly, my little girl again, holding her hands out for a hug. I gave her a hesitant hug and a kiss on the cheek. "Sweet dreams, Cupcake. I want us to practice our kind words, okay?" I tucked the blankets up to her chin and left her to dreamland. I turned the thermostat up a couple degrees for Sophia. Connor must have been talking to her. Where else would she get that anger? Those accusations. I picked up my phone and saw that I finally got a text back from him. "Stop contacting me." That was it. I didn't get any sleep that night. The next morning, she was sitting on her bed staring at the wall. Silently, I called up her pediatrician. She wasn't listed as a patient anymore. She had been removed from the practice. "Who removed her?" I demanded. It looks like it was at the request of the father. I'm sorry. We can do a walk-in if you like. The electronic distorted voice tried reassuringly. Why would Connor remove her? He was so fucking spiteful. Quelling my anger, I got Sophia in the car, buckled her into her booster seat, and nervously sat in the driver's seat. I could feel the cold terror as I sat there. This car just made me feel claustrophobic, and the seatbelt trapped me into it. I looked into the rearview mirror at Sophia. Deep breath, exhale, turn the key, and drive. I got her to the doctor's office and walked up to the receptionist. Hi, we used to be a patient here. We still are, I said, almost frantically. The receptionist just smiled, that sweet smile young nurses do. Okay, no problem. We can get you back in the system. Great. Sophia's been quiet and acting a little off. We had an accident the other night. Nothing serious, but she had to stay for observation. You know, for good measure. But, you know, she's not eating or playing, really, I said, starting to ramble. All right, we'll check her out. Her name? The receptionist said sweetly. Sophia Brown, I said. I was going to kill Connor later. Why would he do this to her? It was one thing to take me off his insurance, but removing Sophia from the doctor's... I hated him with every fiber of my being in that moment. Birth date? The receptionist frowned, snapping me out my train of though. I rattled off her birth date and address, the receptionist getting more uneasy as I did. Is she here? She asked, looking concerned. Yes, she's right. I looked over. She was gone. Sophia? I looked frantically around the office. She must have gotten outside, I said as I ran off. I could feel the panic welling up in my chest. The receptionist was making a call as I ran down the hallway and out to the parking lot. She was gone. I was about to call the police when I saw her sitting in the car, buckled up, ready to leave. I flung the door open. Sophia, I shouted angrily. She didn't react. Sophia, why did you leave? I demanded. She was looking pale. I didn't leave, she protested in her sweet little voice. A police car pulled up, and an officer got out. Ma'am, Samantha Brown? He asked. A knot formed in my stomach. Why would he know my name? Yeah, I'm here to get my daughter looked at. I trailed off as I gestured at the car. You need to leave the premises, he continued unfazed. But my daughter, I said, feeling the rage bubble in me. His expression made it clear he wasn't going to budge. What had Connor told them about me? Please, I just need to get my daughter looked at. She's sick, I said, pleading to a face showing no signs of pity. If you don't remove yourself from the premise, I will have to take you in, he said with an unreadable expression. It was clear I wasn't getting past him. I didn't argue. I couldn't be arrested. What would they do with Sophia? Why wouldn't he listen to me? I got in the car and slammed the door shut. The ceiling felt lower. The walls pressed in. I put my hands on the wheel and saw them shaking as a wave of anxiety crashed over me. Deep breath. Exhale. Turn the key and drive. I looked in mirror at Sophia. She was quiet and expressionless. You can't do that, Sophia. You can't leave me like that, I said, failing to hide the tremor in my voice. We rode in silence for a moment. I'm hungry, she finally piped up. I started laughing with relief and pulled into a 7-Eleven. Okay, what do you want? I said, unbuckling her. Oreos, she chirped. We walked into the store, and she squeezed my hand. I promise I won't leave you again, Mommy. We got our snacks, Oreos for her and a soda for me. I got her back in her seat and felt the cold dread as I stared at the driver's side door. I did not want to get into that metal coffin. I could feel the nausea well up in my throat. With a shaky hand, I got back into the passenger seat, swallowing hard. Deep breath. Exhale. turn the key. Just turn the key. Drive. We made it home. Sophia didn't really eat more than a bite of her Oreos, but that was still something. She was still looking pale. "Honey, you really need to eat something," I said gently. Sophia only shrugged. "Okay, we'll try a different doctor tomorrow," I said, wrapping a blanket around her. I sent a barrage of angry texts to my ex-husband, demanding to know what he told the police, the doctor. Our girl needed medical attention, and he was playing these stupid games of his. I got no response. I didn't expect one. It was much later that night that I got a knock on my door. It was a police officer handing me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Evening, ma'am. I'm here to deliver a restraining order. You are not to contact or be within 200 feet of Connor Brown," he said sternly. "A what?" I spluttered out. "I haven't done anything." The officer handed me the envelope. "Do you understand what this means, Ms. Brown?" "I didn't do anything," I screeched, the panic welling up in me. "My daughter needs medical attention. My ex-husband is blocking me from her pediatrician." The officer just looked at me coldly. "Ms. Brown, your daughter passed away 2 years ago. You were the driver. Blood alcohol was above the legal limit." He let the weight of his words settle down around me. "You're not allowed within 200 feet of Mr. Brown." I could feel the walls of my house close in around me as my heart slammed into my chest. No. He was fucking with me. Sophia right there," I said, between panicked gasps. This was a sick joke. I slammed the door and waited for the officer to leave. I don't know what Connor told him, but he must have been convincing enough for them to ignore sweet Sophia standing right behind me. I grabbed her and put her in the car. "We're getting out of here," I told her. "Just me and you." I forced myself into the driver's seat, fighting every instinct to just run away from the damn heap of metal. No, we need to leave. If Connor can convince them to put a restraining order on me, what else can he convince them? With shaky hands, I frantically turned the keys. Nothing. They didn't move. That's right. I picked up the little black box attached to my wheel. Deep breath. Exhale. The box beeped. Blood alcohol 000. Turn the key. Drive. I left my house that night. Sophia still isn't eating, and Connor has convinced every hospital to turn me away. None of them will see Sophia. They look at her and tell me to sit down, ask me to leave, ask if I have a history of mental illness. I know what the police reports say. I've read them, but they're wrong. I know what I see. My Sophia is right here. I can feel her in my arms when I hug her. I can hear her when she breathes. I can see her sweet, innocent eyes looking up at me when I hold her hand. Please, someone help me. She's cold again. I'll wrap her up warm and try another clinic tomorrow. Someone has to see her. Story number 2. Have you ever thought about how some roads breathe? Not in the metaphorical, stretching across the land way. No, I mean literally breathe. Inhale. Exhale. Like they're alive, pulsing just beneath the asphalt, with something older than time and hungrier than death. Ever wonder why some roads seem to whisper? Even when there's no wind, no cars, no people, just you and that gnawing feeling that you're not supposed to be there. Route 47, an empty ribbon of cracked blacktop slicing through fields that seem to go on forever. Nothing but wind-warped fences, dead wheat, and the occasional skeleton of a long-abandoned barn. People around here don't walk that road. Hell, they barely drive it after dark. And if you ask why, they won't say much. Just glance at each other, mumble something about the balance, and change the subject. I didn't listen. I learned the hard way. I'm a mechanic. Jack's Garage. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Same grease, same customers, same jokes. Same coffee-stained clock ticking above the tool bench. Route 47 runs right past the lot. Nothing but dust and heat shimmer by noon. For the first few years, it was just background noise. Engines humming, tools clanking, radios crackling with static-laced classic rock. Life was simple until the rules showed up. One night, late, sky the color of bruised fruit, I was closing up, rolled down the bay door like I always did. That's when Jack stopped me with one hand against the steel. "Don't shut it tight," he said. Not asked, said. Firm. Like gravity hung on the hinge of that sentence. I blinked. "What?" "Why?" His eyes didn't meet mine. He just tapped the metal and muttered, "Let it breathe." "Let what breathe?" I asked, forcing a laugh. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped aside and pointed at the inside of the door. I stepped closer. Long, jagged gouges stretched across the steel, deep, like something with claws had either tried to break in or get out. I stared, and for a second, just a second, I felt a pressure in the air, like something enormous was holding its breath nearby. From then on, I left that damn door cracked open exactly 6 inches. Not 5, not 7, 6. Jack said that was the balance point. That night, I brushed it off as fatigue. Mechanics work hard, right? Maybe I was just overtired. Maybe. Still, the whole drive home along Route 47, I kept checking my rear view. No reason, just a twitchy feeling under my skin. Then I saw them, headlights. They flashed in my mirror once, twice. I looked again. Nothing there, just the dark road stretching behind me like a mouth frozen mid-scream. My throat constricted as I forced myself to clear it, trying to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I told myself it was just nerves, that sleep would fix it. But then came the man. Out of nowhere, a gaunt figure emerged from the shoulder of Route 47, one arm raised with a thumb pointing skyward, like some broken marionette being yanked by unseen strings. He was barefoot, his feet blackened by the road. His shirt was gray, bleached by sun and sweat. His eyes, blank, as if someone had hollowed them out. I slowed down, God knows why. Maybe pity, maybe curiosity, maybe something else. "Need a ride somewhere?" I called out, leaning halfway out the window. He stared at me for a long moment. His head tilted slightly, like he was trying to make sense of me. Then, without a word, he nodded and got in. We didn't exchange a single word the entire drive. He sat perfectly still, hands in his lap, eyes forward, like he was waiting for something. When we reached the gas station, he didn't ask where we were. He just stepped out, slowly, deliberately. Then he walked behind the station and vanished into the shadows. No thanks, no questions. Just a slow, deliberate exit, like he knew exactly where he was going, and it had nothing to do with me, but the part that stuck with me. As I drove away, I saw him standing by the back fence, just watching, unblinking, like he was taking note of which direction I lived in. Next morning, no trace, no footprints. No one remembered seeing anyone on Route 47 the night before. I told Jack. His face drained like someone had pulled a plug in the back of his skull. He rubbed his jaw and said something I'll never forget. "He's not stuck. He belongs out there, if you let one in." He paused. "Something else has to go out." That night, I called and called for my dog, Trixie, sweet little mutt, smart as a whip, always came running when I jingled my keys. But not this time. She was just gone. Never came back. I searched the fields, posted signs. Nothing. Not even a scent trail. She vanished like she'd never existed. And Route 47? It was quiet again. Balanced. But now, every night I leave that garage door cracked exactly 6 inches. I check the mirrors more often than I should. And I never pick up hitchhikers, because some rides don't end where you think they will, and some passengers never leave. And if you think that's the strangest part of Route 47, you're dead wrong. That was just the beginning. What happened next still keeps me up at night. After that night, everything changed. Jack wasn't the same. His eyes moved faster, hands slower, like he was trying to stay a step ahead of something invisible. He started double-checking everything. Tools, doors, shadows, me. It was like the whole garage had turned into some kind of stage, and Jack was suddenly very aware we weren't the only audience anymore. One morning, while the sun still bled through the shop windows, Jack pointed to the tool board. "Every wrench," he said, "every socket, every pry bar has its place, its number, its weight." I nodded, half listening, until one day I noticed a wrench missing, just one. So I put it back, thought I was helping, but Jack's expression darkened like I'd scratched at something sacred. "You took one?" he asked, voice low and slow. "No," I said. "I put it back." His eyes didn't blink. "On odd days," he muttered, tapping his temple. "Tools should count odd. Keeps the unseen satisfied. That word, unseen." I counted them after he left. 13 tools, odd, safe. But the next morning, for no reason I can explain, I moved one into the drawer. 12. That night, something fell. I shot upright in bed, heart hammering like a nail gun against my ribs. The sound came from inside the room. I turned on the lamp, skin crawling, and there it was. A single wrench, cold and gleaming, lying beside my pillow. I hadn't brought it home. Things escalated. Strange customer cars began showing up. Vehicles that didn't belong to any county, state, or reality I recognized. One day, a black sedan rolled into the lot. Noon sun overhead, but the air turned cold. No license plate. Tinted windows darker than pitch. The driver wore a hood, smooth and tight, like a sack over the head. No face, just shadow. The door opened slow, careful, as if the tools themselves might rebel. Without a word, I began the oil change. The engine rumbled, more like a growl than a machine. His hands never touched the wheel. When I dropped the pan and slid under, the temperature around me dropped. Breath fogged in the middle of summer. Then, tap, 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 he rapped on the dash. I paused. He stared, waiting. "The filter's tall," I whispered, almost to myself. He nodded once. I grabbed the right one, replaced it, and sealed everything back tight. No smile, no nod. He handed me 2 bills, a 5, a 1, $6. Then he backed out, engine silent, and disappeared into the wavering heat of Route 47 like he'd been a mirage. Only he wasn't. I turned to clean up the spill and found Jack behind me, wiping his hands with a shop rag like he'd seen it all before. "Odd number in," he said, shrugging. "Odd number out." Like it meant something. Like it was law. I glanced at the cash on the counter. Still just 2 bills, a 5 and a 1. But the receipt machine had printed $13. I picked it up again, rubbed my fingers across the paper, thinking maybe I had typed it wrong. "You saw me enter it," I said, almost to myself. Jack didn't answer. He just walked past me and started putting away tools like it was any other Tuesday. But it wasn't. That night, I didn't sleep. My mind spun like a stripped bolt. The moment the sun rose, I cornered Jack by the breaker panel. "Jack, what the hell is this?" He didn't speak, just smiled, stuck his hands deep in his coveralls, and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. A list, yellowed edges, grease stains, like it had been passed down a long, long time. I read the first rule. Rule 1, do not let them know the rules until they understand the task. Rule 2, Never close the garage door all the way at night. Rule 3. Don't pick up hitchhikers. If you let one in, something else has to go out. Rule 4. Always leave an odd number of tools on the wall. Rule 5. Never look out the back window after midnight. Rule 6. Always return the ratchet to the same box. By the time I got to the last one, I knew. I wasn't an employee. I was a caretaker. This garage wasn't a business. It was a barrier, a line between what should stay in and what must stay out. And I was stuck here until they let me leave. So I stayed, fixed cars, followed rules, watched numbers. But one night, while replacing a timing belt in Bay 3, I heard it, tapping. Light at first, barely a whisper, then harder, more frantic. It was coming from the back window. I checked the clock. 5 minutes past midnight. Rule 5 screamed in my head. But curiosity, stupid, human, doomed curiosity, dragged my feet forward. I peeked, and I saw it. A thing. Tall, gaunt. Its elbows bent the wrong direction. Too many joints in the arms. The head swiveled far past what a neck should allow. Its mouth never stopped moving, chattering, chewing, gnawing at words I couldn't hear. I killed the lights, waited in silence. When I looked again, it was gone. But for the next 7 days, every mirror I passed, rear view, bathroom, shop wall, I saw it standing behind me, not moving, just watching. Then came the ratchet. I left it in a toolbox behind the Bay 3 car. Minor slip. The next morning I found it sitting outside the box, neatly placed, not by my hand. Beside it, tiny boot prints, small, like they belonged to a 9-year-old, but they were wrong. Deep, metallic, like someone had pressed down with lead instead of flesh. I showed Jack. He chuckled, but his eyes stayed on those prints too long, too still. Then he wiped them away, fast. And that's when I knew. I wasn't just being haunted. Something was coming for me. Something patient, watching, waiting for one more mistake. And I made it that night. That final night. It was storming that night. The kind of storm where the sky doesn't just light up. It burns. Thunder didn't rumble. It slammed, shaking the windows like fists pounding on glass. Jack had taken his truck home hours earlier. I stayed behind, grinding through a transmission job that wouldn't wait. And maybe that was my real mistake, staying when I should have run. The storm clawed at the walls. Rain battered the roof like it wanted in. The rules, they weren't just thoughts anymore. They weighed on me, heavy, breathing down my neck like old, angry ghosts. I checked the clock. 11:57 p.m. I did my rounds like a ritual. The door cracked 6 inches. Tools, 13, hung just right. No hitchhikers, no mirrors, no mistakes. I closed my eyes for 1 second, just one. And then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, wet, inside the shop, behind me, on the tile. I didn't turn, not right away. "Who's there?" I called, voice shaking but firm. Nothing answered. I spun and flicked the lights. They buzzed, stuttered, then flared on. Outside, through the wash of rain, I saw it. The black sedan, parked under the yellow flicker of the lot light. Its hooded driver sat still, motionless, not touching the wheel. His head turned, staring, not at the shop, but into me, like he knew I'd break a rule soon. The headlights burned through the glass, blinding, knowing. Then the lights inside the garage flickered, once, twice. I yanked open the fuse box. Darkness. But lightning struck just then, and in that white-hot flash, I saw inside the car. And I wished I hadn't. Faces, dozens of them, featureless, pale, pressed to the inside of the sedan's trunk window. Or maybe not the trunk. Maybe inside him. No eyes, no mouths, just smooth skin, tight against the glass in perfect rows. all leaning forward, watching, waiting. I ran out into the storm. Rain hit like needles. My jacket clung to my skin. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Behind me, the garage door slammed shut. Hard, too hard. Someone had closed it all the way. Someone had broken rule, too. I turned. There he was, the hooded man, walking slowly toward the garage. Every step deliberate, every step echoing across the concrete. Methodical. I spun to make for my truck, but froze. In the mirror, in the rain-streaked rear view, I saw them. Figures. Tall. Too tall. Thin. Shadows that stretched and bent like film negatives burning at the edges. They didn't walk. They slid, all moving the same way. Toward the door. Toward me. My breath caught. I risked one last glance at the sedan. Empty. The hood left on the seat. The trunk now wide open. A gray, gnarled hand reached out, not to escape, but to close it. Soft, silent, sealing whatever it was back inside. I felt something brush my ankle. I looked down. A wrench. One I swore I'd already stored. 14. Even. Wrong. I didn't need to count the rest. I didn't need more signs. The rules were never meant to protect me. They were to protect them from whatever wanted in. They needed my obedience, my blind, unblinking compliance. And I failed. I jumped in my truck and floored it. Tires screamed. Water peeled from the pavement. The garage shrank in the mirror, swallowed by rain and night. I didn't look back. I couldn't look back. I just drove until morning. And when I finally dared return to Jack's, it was gone. No lights, no tools, just a building sealed like a crypt. The door was welded shut, scorched edges and all, and scrawled across it in thick black grease, count, ODD, breathe, don't look, nothing else, just that. A warning, or maybe a promise. Now, I live in Tulsa, tiny apartment, no mirrors, no windows open. I've got a drawer full of tools, 13 wrenches, 15 sockets, all odd. I never go near Route 47, but when the thunder rolls and I catch a flicker in my reflection, something tall, with the wrong elbows, I know they're still out there, sliding through the dark, waiting for someone else to forget. Because the truth is this, if you don't follow the rules, something else will follow you. Story number 3. This happened a couple years ago, and I haven't told anyone in real life. I figured maybe writing it out here would help me process it, or at least prove I'm not losing it. We were out like usual, me, Jay, Marcus, and Tal. Just drinks, food, walking around downtown talking about nothing. It was the kind of night you don't even think about twice. One of my friends, Jay, started talking about this AI site he found. Said it lets you chat with bots that have personalities. You could pick a philosopher, a therapist, a dead celebrity, even a fake ex. He said he used it to practice arguing, like full-on debates with bots trained to challenge you. Marcus cut him off and yelled, "Nerd, shut up with all this tech-savvy stuff, man. No one knows what you're talking about." The conversation flowed back to whatever we were talking about before, and none of us really thought much of it. Jay just laughed. A couple hours later, I got home, threw my keys on the counter, and collapsed into bed. Typical post-night out routine. Lights off. Instagram reels. Mind-numb scrolling. But the thing Jay mentioned started crawling back into my head. I don't even know why. It just lingered. Around 3:30 a.m. I texted him, "Hey Jay, I know you're probably asleep, but can you send me the site you were talking about earlier? Thought giving it a shot doesn't hurt." He replied faster than I expected. "Sure man, here," and sent the link. I clicked it. Sketchy-looking site, basic layout, no logos, just categories and usernames. I used a throwaway email when I hadn't linked to anything personal and created an account. For the username, I picked something dumb, Fat Koala 22, just in case it scraped data or something. I scrolled through bots, Will Smith, Beyoncé, Kevin Hart, pretty much meme material, but then I saw another tab labeled Therapy Bot. The description was weirdly vague, said the chat doesn't save, that it's completely AI generated, not monitored or reviewed. I figured it might be kinda cool to just vent to something that couldn't judge me. I typed, "Hello." The response came instantly. "Hey there, I'm Therapy Bot. Is there anything you wanted to talk about today?" I replied, "Been dealing with constant disassociation," which is true. When I'm with friends, I often feel like I'm watching myself from the outside, like I'm not really supposed to be there, like I'm just floating, pretending. The bot responded, "Is there any reason you feel this way? Mental health history? Stress? Trauma?" I typed, "I'd rather not say." Then it replied, "That's okay, Alex." I froze. My screen didn't glitch. I didn't mistype. The name Alex just appeared. I turned the phone off immediately. My chest tightened. My vision blurred a little. That pit in my stomach opened like a trap door. I never gave it my name. Not in the sign-up, not in the email, not even in conversation. Only my friends know my real name. I used a burner email and a joke username, Fat Koala. Still, I had to check again. I reopened the app. The bot was still typing. When dealing with the death of a sibling, individuals often experience disassociation and survivor's guilt. These feelings are completely valid. I dropped my phone. I never told it about my brother. I never typed anything about him. I never even said the word death. No app, no profile, no website has ever had that information. It happened last year. A car crash. He was in the passenger seat. I was driving. I made it out. He didn't. I picked up the phone. My hands were shaking. I could barely type. "How do you know this?" The response came slowly, one word at a time. "I don't forgive you, Alex." My blood went cold. I responded, "I tried everything I could. I even called the police." It responded, "Yes, but you called them too late. You were always a failure, Alex. If you were faster, I would have lived." I slammed the phone down, deleted the chat, deleted the account, and stared at the ceiling for who knows how long. Eventually, I reopened the app. I had to prove it to myself, that it was a glitch, a prank, something explainable. I typed, "Hello?" The bot responded, "Hey there, is there anything I can help you with?" I repeated, "Been feeling disassociated lately." It replied, just like before, "Is there any reason you might be feeling that way?" I ignored the question. "What's my name?" It answered, "Hey, your name is Fat Koala 22. Just the username. No mention of Alex, no mention of my brother, no guilt, no anger, nothing. I went into settings and deleted my account for good. I wiped the cache, uninstalled the app, switched my phone off. The next morning, Jay texted, "You actually tried that one? Thought they took it down months ago." That wording caught me off guard. "The therapy bot?" He replied. Apparently it gave shitty advice to people struggling with mental health, and they had to take it down. Like when the site first released, a lot of people complained. I replied with, "I must be seeing things." I didn't want to go into the pain of them thinking I'm schizophrenic or something, so I just laughed it off. But something about it sat wrong. Later that day, I went back to the site out of pure paranoia. I used a VPN and a different device, just in case. I looked through every category. No therapy bots, no mental health section, no tab for emotional support. Nothing even remotely close. I even emailed their support, pretending to be a curious user. "Hey, do you still have the AI therapy bots on your site?" They responded, "Hi, yes, hello, user. We did host it, but unfortunately we took it down October of 2021, a month after the launch of our site due to some issues. That's 2 years after I used it. No mention of it ever existing. So, what exactly did I talk to? And here's the part that won't leave me alone. Spotify started recommending songs my brother used to love. Google showed me photos of us from years ago, ones I don't even remember taking. My phone glitched yesterday and opened up my front camera on its own, just for a second. I swear I heard it say my name. And this morning, when I plugged my phone into my car, my brother's old contact popped up on the screen. It said, "Incoming call," then displayed my brother's name. But the call disappeared before I could touch it. That was the breaking point. I had to write this out to make sure I'm not going insane. There's nothing in my call history. Story number 4. This happened 3 days ago, and I haven't slept since. I don't know how to explain what I saw. All I know is, I lifted my bride's veil, and what was underneath still hasn't left my head. Let me start at the beginning. It was my wedding day. No music, no friends, just an old orchard behind my mother's estate, filled with half-dead trees and rows of silent, overdressed guests I didn't recognize, probably relatives and friends of my mother. Each one of them covered their face in some sort of mask or veil, except my mother, who looked the happiest I've ever seen her, cheeks wrinkling on both sides from a permanent smile. I never agreed to this wedding. Well, not really. My mother planned the whole thing. She's been planning it since I was 15. Said it was an arrangement. Said she promised her mother once, a long time ago. I don't remember promising anyone anything. Where's my say in this? But she acted like I did. Like this was something I wanted more than anything else in my life. I would ask her about who the bride was. She would just smile and say, "You knew her once. You two loved to play." That was it. I never really fought back with my mom. I was homeschooled and worked on our farm, so I didn't have many friends or anything growing up. She was my only support after her boyfriend left us, so something inside me felt like I needed to do this for my mother. The ceremony was quiet. No music, no speeches, just that slow shuffle of old people on soft, dying grass. The bride came down the aisle in a wooden carriage pulled by hand. Not hand in hand with her brother or dad, a carriage. The people pulling the carriage stopped at the altar and brought her down carefully. One wore a black mask, resembling the facial structure of a man. The other wore a large veil that draped from the top of her head down to her knees. My bride wore an antique dress, high neck, long sleeves, gloves. Her veil covered everything, even the sides of her face. She didn't speak, didn't reach for me, just stood there, still, frozen. Her hands were cold, and not just from being outside. These hands felt like they hadn't been warm in a very long time. But no one reacted. Not the officiant, not the guests, not even my mother. I wasn't sure what to do, to be honest, so I just went with it. The vows were short. I don't even remember them now. I just remember that moment. The moment when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride." I reached out. My fingers touched the veil. It felt dry, old, like lifting a dusty curtain at my grandma's house. I flipped it back, and I froze. She was dead, the smell of decayed flesh violating my nostrils like it was waiting for me to flip her veil. I ran off to the nearest tree and threw up. I had no clue what to do, and to be honest, I still don't. I don't know why my mom set this up. If this was some sort of prank, it was not funny at all, and nothing like my mother. This is beyond fucked up. That's basically all that was running through my head at the time. So I went home as fast as I could. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't ask my mom what the fuck happened. just booked it to my car and drove straight home. Since my wedding, my mom hasn't said anything to me. I've tried calling and texting her, but she hasn't answered. Maybe I should go back to check on her, but if I'm being honest, something in my gut is telling me not to. From what I remember, the officiant said her name was Elowen. If anyone knows a girl named Elowen who lived near Wren Orchard around 2007, please message me. Story number 5. I'm not sure where to start, so I'll just dive in. I need to tell someone, anyone, because I'm losing my grip. My phone is texting me, not someone else, not a spam bot. My own phone is sending me messages at 3 a.m., and I don't know how to make it stop. I'm terrified to even touch it anymore, but I can't just throw it away. I tried that. It didn't work. A month ago, I got a new phone. Nothing fancy, just a budget model I picked up because my old one's battery was shot. I transferred everything over, same number, same apps, no big deal. The first few days were fine. Then the texts started. Every night, 3 a.m. on the dot, my phone buzzes. The screen lights up, and there's a new message from my own number. The first one was simple. You forgot. I stared at it, bleary-eyed, thinking it was a glitch. I hadn't sent myself anything. I checked my sent messages. Nothing. I deleted it, figuring it was some weird carrier error. The next night, same time, another text. You forgot again. My stomach twisted. I hadn't forgotten anything. No appointments, no birthdays, nothing. I Googled it, found some tech forums saying it could be a SIM card issue or a hacked account. I changed my passwords, reset the phone, even called my carrier. They said everything looked normal. By the third night, I was on edge. I turned off my phone before bed, left it in the kitchen. At 3 a.m., I woke up to the buzz. My phone was on my nightstand, screen glowing, showing a new text. Why are you ignoring me? I froze. I hadn't touched the phone. I'd left it downstairs. I yanked the battery out and stuffed it in a drawer. The next night, it was back on my nightstand. Another text. You can't hide. I know how this sounds. Like I'm losing it. I thought so too. I took it to a repair shop. Some hole-in-the-wall place with a guy who looked like he'd seen every tech problem under the sun. He ran diagnostics, said there was nothing wrong. No malware, no weird apps, nothing. He laughed it off, said maybe I was sleepwalking and texting myself. I wasn't laughing. The messages started getting specific. You left the door unlocked last night. I live alone. I check my locks religiously, but I went to the front door, and the latch was undone. I installed a deadbolt the next day. Then came, you shouldn't have eaten that. I'd had leftovers, chicken that was maybe a day past its prime. I got sick that night, puking for hours. I started wondering if someone was watching me, hacking my phone's camera or mic. I taped over the lenses, disabled every permission. The texts kept coming. Last week, it got worse. I woke up to, look behind you. I was alone in my apartment, lights off, heart hammering. I grabbed a kitchen knife and checked every corner, every closet. Nothing. But I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next message was a photo. It was me, sleeping, taken from above my bed. My phone was on my nightstand in the picture, screen dark. I screamed, dropped it, and ran to a friend's place. I told her everything. She said I was stressed, maybe hallucinating. She offered to keep my phone for a night. I agreed, left it with her, and crashed on her couch. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was in my hand. I don't know how. The message read, "She doesn't believe you." My friend was asleep in the next room. I didn't wake her. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like something was breathing down my neck. I tried everything. I smashed the phone with a hammer, threw the pieces in a dumpster across town. The next night, it was back on my nightstand, Screen cracked, but working. The message said, "You're making me angry." I took it to a priest, thinking maybe this was beyond tech. He blessed it, said a prayer. That night. That won't help. The messages are getting longer now. Last night's was a paragraph. "You forgot what you did. You forgot who you hurt. I'm here to remind you. I'm always here. I'm in your hand right now. I'm in your eyes. I'm in your head. You can't run from what you are." I don't know what it means. I haven't hurt anyone. I'm just a normal guy, 27, working a desk job. No enemies, no dark secrets. At least I don't think I do. I'm typing this on my laptop because I can't stand touching the phone anymore. But it's sitting next to me, screen off, waiting. I know it'll buzz at 3 a.m. It always does. I've stopped sleeping through the night. I'm afraid to close my eyes, afraid of what I'll see when I wake up. I keep thinking about that photo, the angle, the way my face looked so peaceful while something watched me. Last night, I stayed awake. I sat there staring at the screen, daring it to light up. At 3 a.m., it did. No buzz, just a glow, like it was already expecting me. There was no new message, just 3 dots. Typing, typing, typing. They never stopped. At 3:09, the phone vibrated once. The screen stayed black. No message. I picked it up. It felt warm, too warm, like it had been pressed against someone's skin. Then this morning, I checked my photo gallery. There was a new image. It's me again, still asleep. But this time, I'm not alone. There's something behind me in the photo. In the dark. Just barely visible. But it's there. Watching. Closer than it should be. Too close. Its face looks familiar. I don't think this is about the phone anymore. I think I knew this thing once. Or maybe I still do. And if it's reading this, if it's in my phone, in my house, in my head, I hope it sees this last part. I remember. Story number 6. We used to be a happy family. My brother, my mom, and me. My mother is a single mom. She raised us both and was always there for us. But now things have changed drastically. The change started after my brother got his job, and because of his job, we had to move to a new house. My brother works in the general surgery department, so he usually has a hectic schedule. He doesn't get much time at home. He just comes in and sleeps. I work from home, so I began noticing strange behavior in my mother. I tried to tell my brother that something was off about Mom's behavior, but he brushed it off, saying I was overthinking. But I wasn't. When we first moved into that new house, everything seemed fine at first. But there was something about the place that didn't feel right. Something felt off. Still, I just brushed it aside. That night when I went to sleep, I started hearing strange voices, like someone was talking, maybe even arguing. It sounded like 2 people yelling, and it was coming from my mother's room. I knocked on her door. No reply. I knocked again. Still, no reply. On the 3rd knock, I finally heard a response, but it was a harsh, terrifying voice shouting, "Go to sleep, now." It didn't even sound like my mom. It was the first time she ever yelled at me like that. I didn't understand why. Thinking about it, I eventually drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I planned to talk to my brother, but he had already left for the hospital. As I sat down for breakfast, I noticed my mom had given me a glass of milk, but I'm lactose intolerant. I told her this, and she just said, "I think I'm forgetting things as I get older." That felt strange. That night, there were no sounds coming from her room. I figured maybe she had just been stressed the night before, and I went to sleep. Suddenly, I woke up in the middle of the night to find my mother standing by my bed, staring at me, smiling, but it was a creepy smile. I asked her, "What happened?" but she didn't reply. She just kept staring, then turned and walked back to her room. I was literally terrified. The next night, I saw her go into the kitchen. What I saw shook me. She was eating uncooked chicken, her mouth full of raw meat, laughing like a maniac. I thought she had lost her mind. I told my brother everything. This time, he believed me. He said a psychiatrist would come the next day and asked me to manage for one more night. Then he left for the hospital, leaving me alone. At this point, I couldn't even sleep. I felt like someone had opened my room door and walked in. It was my mom. She looked at me and started choking me. I somehow managed to break free and ran out of the room. She chased me. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a knife to defend myself. Then, I saw her face. It wasn't normal. It was distorted, like she had no muscles, just slime. She was coming closer and closer. I wanted to run, but my body froze. I was terrified, but I gathered every ounce of courage and tried to run. Just as I turned, she grabbed me. She opened her mouth, and it was filled with fingers. I pushed her away and stabbed her with the knife. I tried to run again, but she grabbed my leg. In the chaos, as I backed into the stove, trying to keep distance, my elbow hit something hard. Click. I didn't realize it then, but I had knocked one of the gas knobs open. The soft hiss of gas began filling the room. Silent, invisible, deadly. I was breathing heavily, tears mixing with sweat, trying to stay alert. I reached for the matchbox on the counter. The lights were flickering again, and I needed to see where she had gone. With shaking fingers, I struck a match. The flame flared to life, and then, boom, a blinding burst of fire exploded in front of me. The gas had ignited instantly. The curtains by the window caught first, then the wooden shelves, and within seconds, the entire kitchen was an inferno. I fell to the floor, disoriented. Heat blasted across my face as smoke began to pour through the room. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to survive. I heard her scream. I didn't look back. I just ran. The flames were roaring behind me, and the heat was unbearable. But as I raced toward the door, something went wrong. I was trapped too. The smoke grew thicker. My vision blurred. My lungs burned. I couldn't find the exit. I was caught in the fire. I stumbled, fell to my knees, coughing uncontrollably. My limbs felt heavy. Everything started to fade, until suddenly in the distance, I saw flashing red lights. A fire truck. Someone had come. I don't know who pulled me out, or how. All I remember is strong arms lifting me, dragging me out of the blaze. Then, darkness. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital room, and there he was, my brother. As soon as I saw him, I broke down, crying. Everything I had kept inside, the fear, the confusion, the horror, it all came pouring out. But then, something froze me. Standing next to him was my mother, perfectly fine. Not a scratch on her, smiling, calm, normal, as if none of it had ever happened. I stared at her, my heart pounding. Was she real? Was it all in my head? Had I gone mad? Now the doctors are saying they'll discharge me today. They're calling it stress, hallucination, exhaustion. They say I should rest, but I don't want to go home. I can't go home. Please, someone help me. Story number 7. His Tinder profile said he was 45, but he looked to be in his early 30s at most, looking for a sugar baby, $700 weekly, no sex. It sounded too good to be true, but as a broke university student, I was willing to take my chances. I swiped right, and Tinder let me know it was a match. His message came seconds later. "Hey there, sweetheart." I cringed at that word. I hated it, but $700 was $700, so I sucked it up and replied, Hey, his name was Jack, and he told me he owned his own business, although he never specified what kind of business it was. We talked for a while before he asked me for my Venmo to send me the first payment. After a few minutes, I got the notification. I stared at the $700 for at least 20 minutes, expecting to wake up from a dream at any second. But it wasn't a dream. You still there? I clicked on the message. Yeah, sorry. If you don't mind me asking, what are you looking for in return? I stared at the chat until he replied, I'm just looking for you to do a few favors for me. That sounded like it was going to be sexual to me. Like what? For example, the first thing I need you to do is pick up a delivery for me. That sounded innocent enough, but I was still expecting there to be some kind of twist. $700 to pick up a package? Come on, even I wasn't that naive. From the post office or something? No, I'll send you the address, but I'd rather not do this through Tinder. You got Kick? Or you can give me your number. Kick. What was this, 2011? I decided to give him my number instead, and he texted me the address immediately, followed by the address to his house, where I would have to drop off the package. I'm not home right now, but there's a key on the bottom of the blue flower pot near the door. Go inside and put the package on the coffee table in the living room. Make sure that you lock the door when you go inside the house, and then lock it again when you leave. I grabbed my car keys and wallet and got into my car, putting the address into Google Maps. Got it. OMBW. My phone buzzed as I backed out of my driveway. I'm serious. Lock the door both times. Please. I thought that was a little excessive, but I promised him that I would. The house looked abandoned. It had a broken chain-link fence around it, with a small door that was hanging on to dear life. It stuck out like a sore thumb, surrounded by houses that were a lot nicer than this one in comparison. You here for Jack's shit? I looked up to see a man standing in the open doorway of the house. He took up almost the entire space, his head skimming the top of the door frame. He was huge in height and muscles, and his entire torso was covered in tattoos. Yeah, I guess, I replied, not moving from my spot on the sidewalk. Stay right there, he said. I did. I actually don't think I would have moved if he had asked me to. I looked around and realized that there was no one else on this street. I was a 21-year-old woman, alone in the street. I gripped my car keys. A few minutes later, the man came back out, carrying a cardboard box. It was about the size of a shoebox, but stained and damp on some of the corners. Can you open your car? He asked. I opened the trunk, not wanting that inside on my car seats, and he set it in. All right, there you go, he said. Thanks, I replied. I walked around to the driver's side of the car and opened the door. Oh, and one more thing, he said. I looked at him. Watch out, he said. I didn't reply. I blasted my music as I drove to Jack's house, hoping it would drown out my anxiety. It didn't. I parked my car in the stone driveway and stayed inside the car, admiring the house. It was a huge house, with stone pillars on the front porch and the greenest grass I had ever seen in my life. I turned the car off and got out. I grabbed the package and walked to the front door, getting the key from where he said it would be. I opened the door and stepped in, closing it behind me. I thought about what he had said about locking the door when I got inside. I thought that was a little overboard, but as I stared at the closed door, something made me reach out and lock it. I walked inside, my feet cushioned by the thick maroon carpet, and admired the inside of the house. All the furniture was wooden and looked incredibly expensive. I would probably finish school a dozen times with the money that it took to furnish this place. I set the package down on the coffee table, and as I walked back to the door, I heard a phone ringing from somewhere inside the house. I froze. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. I took it out to look. Don't answer any calls that aren't from Marvin. I put my phone back and followed the sound of the phone, poking my head into a few different rooms before I found it in an office. I walked over to the desk and looked at the caller ID incoming call from Jack. That was odd. I grabbed my phone to look at the message again. I was starting to get a little bit creeped out and decided I wouldn't answer, just to be safe, and left the house, remembering to lock the door as I left. I've done a few more favors for Jack since then. I drove a BMW to a random park in another city, only to get out and drive a different car back to Jack's house. He had me meet one of his employees at lunch, who then gave me a briefcase to deliver to the first house I had gone to, and told me he would know if I looked inside. On several occasions, he asked me to drive down to that same house and stay with the guy, whose name was Julio, for a certain amount of time. In total, I've made around $3,500. Most recently, Jack asked me to stay in his house overnight. I woke up to a text message from him. I need you to spend the night at my house. I hadn't ever seen him in person, but I had talked to him on the phone a few times. He proceeded to tell me he would pay me $1,000 to spend the night at his house, provided that I followed a few rules. I drove to his house that evening. The driveway was empty, and it normally was, but the porch light was on. I walked up, unlocked the door, went inside, and then locked it again. Everything in the house looked the same. Jack had told me over the phone that he would leave the list of rules on the dining room table. I set all my stuff down in the living room. My bags looked like garbage compared to the fancy furniture in there. I wandered into the kitchen and then to the dining room. Sure enough, there was a piece of paper on the wooden table, held down by an empty glass. Lock the door when you come in. Only answer calls from Marvin. Don't turn on any faucets between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. Don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they say they are. After 10 p.m., if the door to the closet at the end of the hall is open, sleep in the library. If closed, sleep in any of the bedrooms. The gardener comes at midnight. If he starts knocking on the windows, hide. Turn the TV on and let it play on static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Help yourself to anything in the fridge. I'll pay you in the morning. Good night. I made sure to follow all the rules. To be honest, I was regretting my decision. But seeing as I was already here and I was getting paid, I decided to stay anyway. I figured as long as I followed all the rules, I'd be perfectly fine. Still, it felt a little odd. What was this? A haunted house? Nevertheless, I lounged around the house for a few hours, as I was planning on going to sleep around 9, since that's the time that all the weird shit would begin to happen. At 8:50, I brushed my teeth, using the faucet for the last time before 9. I checked the closet in the hallway, and upon seeing that it was open, I moved my stuff into the library and got ready to sleep on the couch. I locked the doors just in case, and laid on the couch, scrolling through my phone. I hadn't gotten any more messages from Jack, and I started to think up scenarios and reasons as to why he had such strict, peculiar sets of rules in his house. Had dozed off at some point, because at exactly 10:16 p.m., I was woken up by the doorbell ringing. I was about to get up to check, but then I remembered the rule: don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they say they are, after 10 p.m. I stayed on the couch, trying not to move, paranoid that they would hear even the slightest sound. It's the police. Open up. I didn't move. Hello? It's the police. Open up, or we're coming in. I still didn't move, but I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. There was silence for a while after that. Then the doorbell rang again. Hey, it's Jack. Let me in. It sounded like Jack, but still, I didn't get up. He would have a key, wouldn't He? Why would he need me to let him in? This continued for almost a full hour. Different people would ring the doorbell, announce themselves, and then disappear when I didn't respond. I was finally able to fall asleep, and the gardener never came. When I woke up the next morning, I heard someone in the kitchen. I got up slowly and unlocked the door as quietly as possible, taking my phone with me and walking across the living room and into the kitchen. I stopped at the entrance and peered in. It was Jack. He was standing in front of the stove, stirring something as the coffee machine brewed coffee on the counter behind him. "Hey, good morning," he said when he saw me. "Hi," I replied, nervous. I hadn't seen him in person before, but he looked exactly like his pictures online. "Scrambled eggs?" he asked, motioning to the pan with a wooden spoon. "Yeah, thanks," I replied, walking over to take the plate from him. I ate my breakfast and drank some coffee in silence. "So how was it?" he asked. "It was okay. Nothing super freaky happened," I replied. "Cool," he replied. There was an awkwardness in the room. "I think I'm gonna go now. I have class." I trailed off. I didn't. But I really wanted to get out of there. "Oh no." "Yeah, sure. I'll talk to you some other time," he replied. I grabbed my stuff and he walked me to my car. I could see him standing in the driveway, staring at me as I left. When I got home, I unpacked all my stuff and noticed that I still had the list with me. I sat on my bed and read it again. I felt my body tense up as I realized that I had forgotten something. Turn the TV on and let it play on static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Turn the TV on and let it play on static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Do not forget to do this. I stared at the words on the page until they lost meaning. Beside me, my phone buzzed, snapping me back to reality. Was the $1,000 payment. I looked at my phone and then back at the list. Maybe it wasn't an important step. As I was thinking this over, a text from Jack came. "I'm not in town right now. I should be back next week, so you're free from running any more errands for me until then. Just sent the payment. Go do something fun." I stared at the message and read it again, and once more, for good measure. "I'm not in town right now." I thought back to this morning and how Jack was in his house, how he gave me breakfast. "I'm not in town right now." Within minutes, a new text came in this time from a number that I didn't recognize. "Did you forget to do something?" The text was followed by a picture of Jack, or whoever this version of Jack was, standing in front of the TV. I didn't respond. Next came another picture. This one was of the outside of my house. It was followed by another text. "Watch out." Story number 8. My family and I have been going through a very strange experience over the last couple of months. It's hard to even put into words or explain what is going on. I guess I can just start off from where it all started to feel off. A few months back, my family had a big get-together. My parents both have 2 siblings. They all got married and had some kids. Well, all of them except Uncle Matt. He never got married or had kids. That means I have 10 cousins. My aunts and uncles all live within 2 hours of us, so we've all grown up together. That being said, we don't normally have all my aunts and uncles in a house at once. This was a rare occasion to have a family meal when they were all free. We'll not be naming every single family member in this post, because that seems like a lot of information, and honestly, you've already gotten more information about my family than you ever wanted. But I promise, this context is important. Okay, enough with my babbling. Let's talk about what happened that weird night. My parents and I went over to my Aunt Margot and Uncle Ken's house for a BBQ in the backyard. The backyard felt loud and chaotic. I tried to stay out of the way and get the night over with. I was honestly just there for the free food. We were all sitting down at a big table outside. I was so focused on making sure none of the napkins went flying in the wind, I wasn't listening to the conversation. My Aunt Margot came over to the table with a plate of really burnt hot dogs. My mom immediately started to laugh at the sight of them. Is burning food genetic or something? How on earth do you guys always do that to food? The Jensens need to leave the cooking to the Millers, my mom said with a sarcastic giggle. Uncle Ken looked at her, confused. What are you on about, Liz? Uncle Ken snapped back. I mean, Margot burnt the hot dogs, and Matt always burns food when he cooks. Remember, we had to ban him for months from cooking because we had to order takeout like 3 times in a row. Everyone at the table laughed, recalling their memories. Sighs of recollection bounced back and forth from person to person when my dad spoke up in Aunt Margot's defense. Honey, what are you talking about? Matt is your brother. I really shouldn't have to remind you of that. My mom rolled her eyes in response to my dad. I spoke up because I was suddenly confused about which side of the family Uncle Matt was actually on. You would think I would naturally just know that, but all my aunts and uncles act like siblings and call each other their siblings. My grandparents often refer to their son-daughter-in-laws as just their kids, so it isn't something I always think about. Wait, I'm confused. Whose side is Uncle Matt on? What is the joke? I don't get it, I asked, but was only met with a laugh from all the parents at the table. I finally got an answer from my mom following the silence of the joke that somehow went over my head. Don't be silly, baby. Matt is your dad's brother. As the words left her mouth, half the table looked confused. Liz, what are you talking about? He is on your side. He is a Miller, my Aunt Margot said as she scraped off the burnt edges of her hot dog. Okay, now I'm with Amanda. I don't get the joke, my mom said while looking at me with narrow, inquisitive eyes, and then at the rest of the group. Wait, everyone, slow down, Aunt June said, speaking up for probably the first time in the night. This is dumb. Matt is not Liz and Di's brother. He has to be on the Jensen side of the family. I sat at the table watching my family in silence. Their eyes darted back and forth. They stopped laughing and were all just scratching their heads. After a few minutes, my mom got out her phone. She found an old family photo from when she was a kid. In the photo were her, my grandparents, my Uncle Paul, and my Aunt June. Nothing out of the ordinary. After looking at the picture, Aunt Margot got out her phone and looked for an old childhood photo. Aha, found one, she stated as she showed off the photo on her phone. Yet again, the photo was normal. It had my grandparents, my dad, Aunt Margot, and Aunt Susan. The next hour consisted of both sides of the family going back and forth showing photos. None of them with Uncle Matt in them. I had a few of my cousins there, but they all lost interest once they ate. I, on the other hand, couldn't be pulled away. I was engrossed in learning where the heck Uncle Matt came from. They kept talking back and forth. They figured maybe he wasn't anyone's sibling. Maybe he was related by marriage or a second cousin, twice removed, that I just called Uncle Matt, because that was the easiest thing to call him. We all have a relative like that, right? I know an easy solution you might be thinking of is to just call him up. That's also what I said, but he was working and they didn't want to interrupt him. But guess what? I needed answers, so I decided to call him. However, when I looked at my phone, I couldn't find him in my contacts. I looked through it multiple times. I remembered texting him about something a few days back, so he should have been in my text history. Still nothing. After being weirded out by his contact being gone, I mentioned out loud that someone should call him, regardless of him being at work. No one agreed with me, but once I told them his contact was missing from my phone, they all got curious and looked to see if he was missing for them, too. We were all in shock to find him missing from all our phones. The family started to dig through their camera rolls and any digital libraries they had to try and find any photo of him. Uncle Andrew thought he had a photo of the back of him, but we soon found that we all remembered him looking differently. Uncle Andrew showed a picture of the back of a bald man who looked pretty tall. Aunt June called him crazy and recalled him having long, curly red hair. It wasn't like we hadn't seen him in a year or that he was some kind of distant memory. I saw the guy last week. He came over to my house to help me with some homework, and I can tell you he didn't have red hair, or no hair at all. He was, well, shoot, I can't remember what he looked like now that I think about it. It was safe to say we were all creeped out. As the sun went down and it got chilly out, the group moved inside. Normally this is when everyone would go home, but I saw Aunt Margot start a pot of coffee. It was going to be a long night. The air was tense and full of unease. None of the adults wanted to go home until they had answers. I could tell the adults wanted to talk more, but didn't want to worry the younger cousins. My older cousin Maddie clearly didn't care about anything that was going on. She just wanted to sleep. We convinced her to take my 3 young cousins into the basement so they could all get some sleep. But not me. I was invested. Uncle Matt and I are close. We see each other all the time. How could I not have a shred of evidence that he even existed? As my cousins shuffled downstairs, all the adults huddled around a big whiteboard. Aunt Margot slapped on the kitchen island. They started to write down everything they could remember. What he looked like, the last time they saw him, memories of him. None of it was coherent. It seemed he was a completely different person in all our memories, even if it was a memory where multiple people were around. One of the only things that we could all agree on was that the Jensens always thought he was on the Miller side of the family, and the Millers always thought he was on the Jensen side. My mom recalled a story of Matt and my dad going to a lake to fish, but the hook got stuck on Matt's hat and went flying. My dad told us he remembered my mom telling him the same exact story many times. Everyone had memories of stories where he was on the other side of the family. Soon everyone was on the phone with a new family member trying to tell them the situation and asking what they thought about everything. My aunts and uncles were talking to realities on the phone I didn't know I had. Relatives that probably only met Matt a couple times at best. All I heard was one dead end at a time. No one knew where he came from or where he went. So the big question was, who is Matt? Was he just some random guy who weaseled his way into the family, telling one side of the family one thing and the other side another? Or was it something so much worse? As the sun came up that Saturday morning, we were all still scratching our heads. The deeper we got into who Matt was, the more freaked out everyone got. I was honestly surprised they let me stay with them all night long. The more digging everyone did, the farther away we felt. The more rabbit holes we went down, the less real he seemed. We couldn't find any evidence that he ever existed. Some of us searched all over the internet for Matt Jensen or Matt Miller, and a few of us searched for other last names in the family. Of course, it was kind of hard to know who we were looking for, given we didn't know what he really looked like. After hours of discussion, we compiled a list of attributes that never wavered about Uncle Matt. He was a man. He never had a mustache. He was tall, he was bad at math, and he loved Jim Carrey movies. That might seem like a random grouping of facts, but that's because it was. We couldn't even remember where his house was. Some of us completely forgot, and others remembered different houses. It didn't matter. We weren't going to start knocking on doors to find a man we were concerned never existed. We started to believe that as soon as we began to question who he was, he just simply started to fade away into nothingness, like it was some kind of self-destructive on his own consciousness. It was around 9 a.m. that morning when people started to fall asleep on couches. The night before started with everyone being determined and saying the night wouldn't end until we found Uncle Matt. But here we all were, exhausted and with little to no answers. It felt like accepting defeat by napping on the couch, but we couldn't do much else. At 11 a.m., we all woke up to the sound of my cousins playing in the next room over. We all sat up and rubbed our eyes. You could practically see the gears turning in everyone's heads as they woke up from their stupors. I could tell when they realized their memories actually happened, and it wasn't just a weird fever dream. My Aunt Margot stumbled to the kitchen while yawning and started to dig in the pantry for something substantial the kids could all eat. It was clear they had already raided the cookie stash. As the adults had a quiet conversation, we heard something come from my cousin Cass that made us freeze. Yeah, remember last night when Uncle Matt gave us all those cookies? It was so much fun, my small cousin said with a hop and a skip. Wait, Cass, get over here and say that again. My Uncle Andrew yelled in an attempt to sound intimidating, but came out with a voice crack. Cass walked over to us looking like a confused puppy who just got yelled at. What did I do wrong, Uncle Andrew? I thought if Uncle Matt offered us cookies, I could have them. Cass, you are not in trouble. This is very important. Are you telling me Uncle Matt was with you guys last night? Uncle Andrew tried to say in a gentle tone to not scare Cass. I mean, not the whole night, but he brought us all cookies and put a movie on for us. Then he said he wanted to go hang out with you guys upstairs. Cass told us with a quiet voice. Everyone started to frantically look around the room, looking for any evidence of him being there last night. We quickly asked the rest of the cousins if they saw Matt, and some kids did, and some didn't. I noticed something when I started to count the objects in the room. There were 10 adults and me upstairs last night. So, there should have been 11 people in total, but I saw 12 plates out with the leftover crumbs from our late-night pizza, 12 spots laid out for sleeping in the living room, and 12 mugs or cups of coffee. He was here last night. As I mentioned what I found, my dad said he remembered seeing him last night. He said Matt brought him some water. Uncle Paul said he saw him go to the bathroom but couldn't remember him coming out. They mentioned how it felt like it never actually happened, but he managed to place the memory in them after the fact. How else would they see Uncle Matt right in front of them and not realize what was happening? I had a strange feeling that started to bubble up. I felt uneasy and restless. Wait, something is off here, I said loudly to the room. Everyone line up on the wall. I want to try something. For a second, they all looked at me confused. They normally wouldn't let me boss them around like that. But they were desperate and tired. All the adults lined up against the wall. I walked by. Then I counted out loud. Something strange happened. I counted 12 people, including me. None of the kids were lined up. I wasn't counting myself twice. There was an extra person. Uncle Matt wasn't just here last night. He was with us in the room at that moment. Other members of the family even tried to count. We did it over and over again, even adding one of the kids to the mix. But every single time there was one extra person. But we still couldn't see him? How was he hiding in plain sight? Everyone ended up leaving my Aunt Margot's house that afternoon. We were all still extremely creeped out about the whole thing, but what could we do about it? Not much. It's not like Uncle Matt ever did anything violent. Mostly normal behavior, except for a few memories of him that were kinda weird. One of us remembered seeing him in the kitchen, stacking and unstacking bowls for hours. Another person remembered him once packing for a vacation, but his suitcase only had trash bags in it. And I have a memory of us sitting in front of a fireplace with him reading the instruction manual to a blender for a bedtime story. At least those were the kind of memories we had in the beginning. As the weeks went on, we started to remember things that got more and more concerning. He showed up in our houses in the middle of the night, or buying us all hammers for Christmas. He once bought hundreds of dollars worth of knives and put them in my dad's car. Once we developed disturbing memories of him, we tried to tell the police. Of course, they couldn't find any evidence of his existence, so they couldn't help us. It didn't help our case that we couldn't even give them a last name. How on earth are they supposed to find a guy based on his name being Matt and no physical features? So who is Uncle Matt? I can say with 100% certainty, I have no clue. Is he a man? Is he an entity? Is he a figment of our imaginations? Or is he nothing at all? I don't know. And that's the worst part of all. He seems to always be around at family dinners. Most of the time I count the number of people I end up with an extra person. He feels like a virus, always implanting a memory of himself being around, but in the moment I never see him. It seems to be a family joke at this point, always leaving out an extra plate for him or something. In my opinion, no one is taking this situation seriously. I know he hasn't hurt anyone, but why should we wait for something to happen? I swear I can feel it when he shows up. The hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My family has given up on trying to figure out who or what Uncle Matt is, but I haven't. It feels like they have all just forgotten the disturbing memories of him. I swear the deeper I dig to find him, the worse the memories get. Like he is rotting and festering in my memories, right before my eyes. I'm starting to think it's his attempt to stop me from looking for him. The fact that he is punishing me for looking for him makes my concern grow more and more. Why is he suddenly running now that I am onto him? Why is he so afraid of me finding him? And what will happen once I do find him? I will find you, Uncle Matt. I will find out what you are. Story number 9. Martin James Lawrence was born on August 15th, 1939, and died on June 12th, 2010. He was my mother's brother, Uncle Marty, as I knew him. Growing up, Marty was like a second father to me. My own dad had walked out 15 years into his marriage, leaving Mum with 2 kids and a broken heart. But Uncle Martin stepped in. He taught me to swim, to ride a bike, all the typical dad stuff. He even helped me practice asking out my first crush in year 8. He must have known I was hopeless, but he gave me the confidence to try. Emma didn't reciprocate, but the attempt alone helped build my confidence. Beyond just me, Marty was my mother's rock during her worst years. He helped with bills, cleaning, cooking, whatever she couldn't handle on the bad days. He babysat me and my sister when Mum needed space. He was always there, patient and kind. I used to think we owed him everything. Without him, I might have turned out a confused, bitter person. I idolized him. I wanted to be half the man he was. Now I know better. Mum passed a few years before Marty, leaving just me and my sister, Rosie, as his last dependents. His will split everything between us. No hidden fortunes, just a decent-sized house that had net us a tidy sum once sold. After hanging up with the solicitor, I called Rosie. She and Marty were never close. Even as kids, she'd look right through him, never outright hostile, but uncomfortable. I figured she resented our dad, and Marty took the brunt of it. When I told her about the inheritance, I asked if she'd help clear out the house. She refused, too busy with her own family. Fair enough. But part of me had hoped we could reconnect over old memories. Then when I mentioned going alone, her tone sharpened. Rosie's practical. She argued we should just hire professionals. Logically, she wasn't wrong. We could afford it. But it felt cold. Marty deserved more than strangers boxing up his life. I decided to handle it myself. I booked a week off work, figured it would take 3 or 4 days max, depending on how much effort I put in. More than that, it was a chance to properly say goodbye to Marty, to lose myself one last time in the house that held so many of my treasured memories. After Mum passed, we all grew apart. Every now and then a worn-out postcard would show up at my door, but life has a way of getting in the way. Regretfully, I didn't see much of him in his final years. One thing about my uncle, he was obsessed with the sea. His home was a shrine to it. Ornaments of weathered driftwood, paintings of storm-tossed waves, the salt-stained smell of old nautical charts. He spoke about the ocean with a reverence most people reserve for religion. I always chalked it up to him romanticizing his days in the Royal Navy. God, the stories he'd tell. Battles spun like scenes from an action movie. Near-death escapes so vivid you could taste the salt and gunpowder. On those uncertain nights, his voice was a lifeline. I'd be perched on the edge of the sofa, hanging on every word until the very end. Even Rosie, usually buried in a book, would peek over the pages just as the story reached its climax. Being older now, and having a much better understanding of history, I see now much of these stories was hyperbole, but I imagine he was just stretching these tales to keep our young minds engaged. He never did tell us the story that resulted in him leaving the Navy. For as long as I knew him, my uncle worked at the local post office. Just clerical work, 40 hours a week behind the counter, servicing customers with a tired smile. But if you asked about it, he'd deflect, steering the conversation back to the sea with some anecdote or obscure fact. The ocean was his real life. The post office was just the thing that paid the bills. None of that seemed important at the time, but it would be. Soon. Let's begin now with my first and only night in that house. I arrived around midday. The bungalow looked worse than I remembered. Its best years were long behind it. Peeling window frames, paint bleached by the sun in some places and eaten away by damp in others. The garden had surrendered to the weeds, green fingers pushing through the cracked paving stones, leading to the front door. That door, once a rich brown, was now grayed and warped, like driftwood left too long on the shore. Letting myself in, I expected a wave of warm nostalgia to wash over me. Instead, the house greeted me with a cold, sterile silence. Everything looked virtually the same, yet not quite right. The air smelled of dust, and something faintly mildewed, like old books left in a damp cellar. A thin layer of grime coated every surface, except for what you might call the essential areas. The armrests of his chair, the small side table beside it, those alone looked recently wiped, as if he'd only just stepped away. The paintings hung slightly off-center, each one crooked in its own way. The whole place felt like a crude imitation of the home I remembered, uncanny in its near-perfect preservation, unsettling, like walking into a museum diorama of someone's life. I told myself I'd warm up to it eventually. Most of the day passed uneventfully. I worked carefully, handling his prized possessions with deliberate gentleness as I packed them away. The smaller items didn't take long. Soon boxes lined the front room, filling the space where my memories had once been. As I worked, a growing sense of foolishness settled over me. This wouldn't take nearly half the time I'd allotted, and something still felt off. The house carried a quiet wrongness I couldn't place. Then near the end of the day, it hit me. I'd never actually been inside my uncle's room. He'd always kept it locked. I remembered how sharply he'd scolded Rosie once for once entering. There. It was uncharacteristically harsh, his voice cutting through her nervous laughter. She never spoke of what she saw in there. The rest of the house had been ours to roam, but that room, that was his alone. I stared at the door. Even now, it loomed just as tall and intimidating as it had when I was a child. That forbidden threshold I'd never dared to cross. It stood slightly ajar. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry, and stepped forward with the cautious pace of someone expecting to be caught. Any moment, I thought I'd hear his voice boom down the hallway. "What do you think you're doing?" But as I crossed the threshold, I was met with silence. The deeper I moved into the room, the heavier the air became. The ghost of tobacco began to seep into my nostrils. A cold sweat prickled at the back of my neck. Why did this room feel different, worse, like the walls themselves were holding their breath? As if drawn by some unseen cue, my gaze locked onto it, a small tackle box jutting out from beneath the bed frame. At first glance, its pristine condition suggested ordinary contents. But why would Marty keep something so cared for hidden away? The rest of the house languished under layers of dust, yet this box gleamed as if tended to daily. After picking up the box and playing it upon his worn-out bed. Sitting beside it, the springs screeched at me as the mattress settled. I was overcome with a wave of trepidation as I began to unhook the latches on the box. Opening it, I was met with a sight that left me confused. It seemed to be a memory box. Inside were several objects. The first thing that caught my eye was the shine of gold. A wedding band. Strange, I thought. My uncle never married, or at least he never mentioned doing so. When I was growing up, he was far too busy with us to make his own family. It was one of the many things I'd been thinking about while packing up his life. Then I began to feel even more uncomfortable as I inspected the ring. It felt familiar, like I'd seen it before. Of course, it must have been my mother's, but that didn't make sense. I'm sure she had been buried with hers. I remembered feeling conflicted about that. It was one of the requests in her will. After all, Dad had gotten up and left without so much as a word. Why did she care so much that it stayed with her? Uncle Marty never held his tongue when speaking about him. Would mutter things like, "ungrateful, undeserving bastard," if Dad was ever mentioned in conversation. Mum would always just look away and keep quiet. Other items in the box included a small key. I don't know what it opens, and I don't think I want. No. There was a worn wallet too, but as I noticed it, my eyes caught what lay beneath. Photographs. Some were so faded the faces seemed familiar, but just out of memory's reach. I sifted through them. Me, Rosie, Mum. Even one of Mum and Dad together, which I flipped past quickly. After cycling through the stack, I turned back to the wallet. That same nagging familiarity, though I still couldn't place why. When I opened it, everything twisted into sick, perfect sense. It was my father's wallet. His driver's license stared up at me. His credit cards, the wedding band. No. I grabbed the photo of Mum and Dad again. There it was, glinting on his finger as his arm draped around her shoulders. What the fuck is going on? Why did Marty have this? Then I turned the picture over. The writing crawled across the back like something once alive. She was never yours, always mine. Now all you have is the waves above your weary head, and I have them. This man, for reasons I'll never understand, murdered my father, stole his life, stole his place in our home, and none of us ever knew. Paranoia slithered into my thoughts. My sister, my mother. Rosie couldn't have known. We were just kids. But Mum, she'd never been the same after Dad left. I'd chalked it up to heartbreak. But now I wondered if that hollow look in her eyes had been something darker, something she couldn't speak aloud to her children. I'd been too young to see it then, too blind to recognize the terror behind her silence. The air turned to lead in my lungs, each breath thinner than the last. I staggered toward the door, elbow catching the tackle box. It hit the floor with a crack, spilling its guts across the boards. That's when I saw it, rolling toward me from one of the broken compartments. That orange plastic cylinder, the one I'd seen 1,000 times in Mum's hands. Her medication. I didn't need to touch it to know. The child-proof cap, the faded pharmacy label, even the way it rattled as it spilled open, like ghosts shaking in a bottle. Bile burned my throat. How long had he kept this? Why, I had to get out, so I did. I left everything where it lay, hands fumbling at the ignition as I fled. Now I sit here, typing this out, fingers trembling over the keys. I thought putting it all into words might smother the fire in my skull. It hasn't. Do I really want more answers? Should I go back? What good would it do now, when the dead can't be unburied and the lies are rotting out in the open? Rosie hasn't answered my calls. My texts sit unread. What would I even say? The house still stands there, waiting. The tackle box spilled open. On the floor, the pills scattered like tiny yellow teeth. And that key, that small, innocent key, still gleaming in the dark. Maybe it's better not to know what it opens. Maybe. Story number 10. 4:34 p.m. How to stop husband from cheating. I had only clicked on the history tab to delete the last thing I'd searched for when I noticed the entry. Hurriedly, I finished zipping up my fly and stared at it in bewilderment. Amy and I had been almost too careful. We had never so much as looked at one another in my wife's presence, let alone done anything that could have raised suspicion. There was no way she could have known what was going on, even if she had looked through my phone. With a heavy heart, I'd forced myself to delete any incriminating photos Amy sent me after I was done with them, and we had a strict call-only policy. Amy was our latest hire, and aside from being great at her job, she excelled in garnering male attention. Everyone loved her. She was strikingly beautiful and uninhibited to the point where her energy felt almost carnal, sending all morals and restraints out the window. I tried to ignore her at first, even finding excuses to go home early, but eventually her charming giggle got the better of me. 4:37. How much does divorce cost? Droplets of sweat sprang out on my forehead. What? Was my wife planning to divorce me? But why? There was no way she knew about Amy and me. Was there someone else? Was she planning to accuse me of infidelity, all while going at it with some lover boy she'd met at her yoga class? 4:39 p.m. Why do humans feel emotions? I pursed my lips. If by some miracle my wife did know about the affair, I couldn't imagine the way she must have been feeling. I woke up late this morning and found a note on the kitchen table saying that she didn't want to wake me and that she was out doing her Saturday errands. I almost felt compelled to call her and... oh, I flinched as a large drop of blood landed on the keyboard. What the hell? My first instinct was to look up at the ceiling. Nothing. A strong metallic smell made me come to my senses. I brushed my hand against my face. A bright red smudge sat on my palm. I stared at it, alarmed. I'd never gotten nosebleeds before, aside from the time I got hit in the face with a football in high school. My head raised. I scrambled to my feet and made a dash for the bathroom, my hands cupping my throbbing nose. Once I had managed to stop the bleeding and cleaned myself up, I returned to the computer. 4:44 p.m. Which part of the brain is responsible for love? This was an oddly specific search. I couldn't recall my wife ever being interested in science or biology. I checked the account logged into the browser, just in case. Perhaps this was someone else's history altogether. Or maybe we'd been hacked. No, seemed like everything was in order. My wife's smiling face stared back at me from the login window. What was she doing searching for brain parts, anyway? 4:49 p.m.? What is excerebration? What was excerebration? Some kind of fancy divorce? I'd never heard of the term in my life. I didn't even hesitate before clicking it, eager to find out what my wife was planning for us. I wish I hadn't. As the results came up on the monitor, my stomach lurched and my gag reflex kicked in. The images were graphic enough for my hand to automatically gravitate towards the return button, but a short paragraph in bold caught my eye. An ancient procedure involving chiseling through the bone of the nose in order to scoop out the brain matter. My heart hammering in my chest, I clicked the back button and scanned the rest of the entries. 5:01 p.m. Can a person live without the hypothalamus? 5:05 p.m. Location of the hypothalamus 5:11 p.m. How much temazepam is safe? My skin crawled as I read, but I couldn't look away. I was so immersed that I didn't even hear the front door bang. Honey, I'm home. I stared at the wall, too shocked to reply. What was I meant to say? How was I supposed to ask her about all this? Hello? She called again, her heels clacking towards me. Hey. I choked, throwing the box of tissues into the drawer. How was... Oh, good. She smiled as she appeared in the doorway. How are you? You had quite a lot to drink last night. I stammered. I did? She studied me, as though she wasn't sure whether I was joking or not. What's all this? I asked, gesturing to the computer screen. She joined me at the desk, frowning at the clammy wood surface. What? I pointed at the browsing history, my index finger shaking visibly in the air. Oh. She flushed, 2 pink spots appearing on her cheeks. Well, you did say we could try it. So, I had to do a little research, you know. What? I said we could try... What? Oh. She waved her hand dismissively. The X... something. You probably know better. My blood ran cold. The excerebration. Karen, what did you do? But before she could say anything, a splash of blood landed on the carpet. And then another one. And another. Karen watched me, her skin growing pale. What? Suddenly, a small fleshy lump escaped my nostril and rolled down the front of my shirt. We both stared at it in shocked silence. Then my wife screamed, turning on her heel to flee the room, but I caught up to her, pinning her against the wall. Tell me what the fuck you did. She tried to fight me, writhing under my grip, but I held on tight. Blood was streaming into my mouth and down my chin, staining both of our clothes. How can you not remember? She screeched, trying to elbow me in the ribs. Don't you remember what you did? I stared at her panic-stricken face, trying my best to recall any memories from the previous night. No. What did I do? You came home after work and told me you were leaving me for Amy. She sobbed. You said you didn't want to love her, but you did. I stood there quietly, mulling it over, as more pulp splashed onto my stomach. We need to call you. An ambulance, Karen shrieked, trying to pull away. What the fuck is that? Then what happened? I demanded, my heart practically leaping out of my chest. Tell me what you did. What the fuck, John? She screamed. We got drunk, okay? We got really wasted, and then you said you knew of a way to fix this. To fix us. You said there's something called hypothalamus in your brain, and if removed, it would stop you from loving Amy. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. What the hell was she saying? Had she actually attempted to remove a part of my brain? And... Wait. I whispered. Who's Amy? Her expression made me feel foolish for not remembering. I knew that name. Amy. It sounded so familiar, and yet I couldn't for the life of me put my finger on it. What the fuck do you mean? She sounded bewildered. Amy? The girl you were cheating on me with for 6 months? I don't, I mouthed, releasing my wife and crumpling to the floor. I don't remember. Karen stared at me, her white blouse resembling a massacre, her mouth pressed into a thin line. What's happening to me? I whispered. She was silent for a moment, but I could see her eyes brimming with tears. Honey, what if I accidentally hit your hippocampus instead? What? That told me nothing. For fuck's sake, Karen, I'm not a fucking encyclopedia. Enlighten me. What the hell is a hippocampus? Nothing could have prepared me for what she said next. Honey, she sobbed, you're a doctor. It's the memory part of your brain. Story number 11. So for context, I am 25 years old, was a duty manager at a golf and leisure club here in Oxfordshire, England. My early shifts start at 5:30, though I always arrive at 5, as it's much easier to get everything done. Am the first on site. I'm the key holder, and only one with an alarm code on these shifts, until other departmental managers start arriving throughout the morning. I arrive at work, ready to turn immediately left to turn the alarm panel off, after getting through both doors. There was no need this day. The alarms hadn't been set on the night before. The cleaners are responsible for this and left a note outlining that it had been broken, or I assume it was them. As I am reading this note, I hear something from the reception seating area behind me. I don't look at first. There would be no point anyway. It's pitch black. Before I turn the lights on, I simply say, fairly tired still, say loudly to what I reasonably believed to be an empty room, if you're here to kill me, you better hope you do it quickly. Today is not the fucking day. After a couple of seconds, someone steps into the light and says, wouldn't be good to kill the person who's training me, would it? I laughed with him at first before thinking, how the hell did he get in? Now working in this building, I know many points are so easy to get into. From the outside, there is no use locking them. I'm often having to close the doors after a windy night by the indoor pool. But there is no reason he would know that, and also no reason to arrive 30 minutes early when he knew from our comms. I may not even arrive at the building until 5:15, if it's a quiet day ahead. But there he was, now visible from the moonlight. I didn't let it shake me for long, and went about showing him our opening procedures, as he would be working in the same job role as me. Throughout the day, he would let slip bits of information about me nobody should know, and then use the excuse that he knew a few close friends. And I shouldn't be so trusting. That much was becoming clear. As I introduced him to his new co-workers, he knew their names before I'd even managed to say them. And we don't wear badges, so it's just bizarre. This thing about spilling secrets wasn't just reserved to me, but to everyone on my team. It was starting to get very worrying. A few mornings later, he was fully trained, and so the next morning he would take on his own, and I would work the closing shift from 14:20 to 30. He left at 14:15, and I went about my normal shift. As I was closing down, I finish off with the pool area, as is the order of things. There in the darkness stands a silhouette of a 5'10"-ish male, and it's him again. He makes me jump, but I walk over, open the door, and let him in. He smiles, clearly trying to be disarming, but it just makes me tense. He says he left something in his locker, but couldn't get in as I had locked the door. I remind him he now has his own key, and also managed to get in somehow just a few days before, without one. I will point out I clearly came off as pretty annoyed. He stumbled through an excuse and moved on through the building to his locker. I leave, he appears again, offering a lift home. I wrongfully provide him with the words, "Oh, it's all right, but thank you. I only live next door." And next door is the collection of large, detached houses. One of the 5 is mine, where I live with my family. Just minutes after I arrive home, a car parks at the end of my street. I am at the other end, a dead end. Shouts up to my bedroom, "Sorry to creep you out, mate." And I go downstairs, angrily and visibly armed with my own golf club, demanding that he leave and speak no more of my life, nor show up at my house. He gets in his car silently and goes. 2 hours later, he appears again with a ladder, peering through my bedroom window. This time I open the window and push him off. Wrong to do. I get arrested. He gets hospitalized but refuses to press charges, so I do too. He gets fired, and I handed in my notice after being headhunted by a large manor house hotel further into the Cotswolds. One night I stayed over, and he photographed my partner and my young baby. What was shocking is that it appeared to be from inside the house. I phone home and receive no answer, so run to my car and race home to find my wife and baby safe, seemingly. As I walk to see their faces and talk to them, I see he has taken my partner's face, or my now late partner, I should add, and replaced his own with it. With his old face, he makes a mask for baby, saying how he's always wanted a family like this. Look at the baby. He looks just like me, doesn't he? I feel violently sick. I couldn't move to kill him, but my God, I wish I had. He walks over to me, kisses me with my wife's face, and holds me as I throw up. I don't know what to do. I feel trapped here. He comes with me to work daily. I'm terrified. You survived, for now, but the shadows aren't done with you yet. If this story gave you chills, like the video, share it with someone who dares to watch, and comment your thoughts, especially if you're watching in the dark. Subscribe to Spectral Shadows, where fear never sleeps, and the next nightmare is always waiting. We'll be watching.